Godly soul, it's got one desire, which is to be united with God. Its faculties are all cognitive, emotion, and then they all find expression. How? When we're thinking, speaking, or doing the mitzvot of the Torah. Okay. How do you think this plays out for? Let's get a better. We've got the makeup of the soul itself, which is known as the kochot of the nefesh. If you want to be technical, there's the sefirot, which are describing God's faculty, so to speak, which is this table. Those are mirrored with your abilities, your cognitive abilities, your emotional abilities. Then they become manifest through what? Through the garments, through the levushim. So let's take a look. This is how the chain, how it works. Page 11. 10 faculties and 3 garments of the soul. You've got the ideas, which then translate into the feelings, which then translate into becoming expressed through thought, speech, and action. And let's take a look at table 2, because this is important. So if you want to kind of just a bunch of different ways of looking at this, you got your 10 faculties. Those are your insights. How do you look at things? That's your what makes you up. That's your makeup. That's who. What do you want? That's again who you are. Who are you ultimately? Those are your 10 faculties. Your emotional, your ideas. That's who you are. But that doesn't necessarily mean what do you do. Can you see a discrepancy? Do we sometimes, who we are and what we do, there's a discrepancy between those? Yeah? Anyone ever experienced a discrepancy between who we are and what we do? Right? That and what do we want and what we do? Ultimately, there is, right? Because just because we are one way, that doesn't mean that's how it's going to be expressed. That's not how we're going to express ourselves. Again, the 10 faculties are the self. The 3 garments are all about the self-expression. The 10 faculties, the composition of the soul, the 3 garments are the modes of expression of the soul. Very important to understand what these things are. So again, we're made up, ultimately, who we are. We've got 10 faculties to us, split between 3 and 7. 3, what are the 3?
Wisdom, knowledge, and...
Right, ideas, intellectual abilities.
Sure.
And then 7, emotional ideas. And then how we express ourselves are through 3 mediums. What are those 3 mediums?
Thought, speech, and action.
Thought, speech, and action. Okay.
There's thought, speech, and action for both the animal soul and the godly soul.
Exactly where we're going. So till now we've described everything within the godly soul. This is the makeup, the anatomy of the godly soul. It's got itself and it's got its self-expression. And then now we're going on to page 12, text 6, takes us into the beginning of understanding what's the anatomy of the animal soul. So let's take a look. Who we up to? And Lyubov, you want to lead us?
Yes. The Almighty has created one thing opposite the other, just as the godly soul consists of 10 holy faculties, which correspond to the 10 supernatural sephirot, and the soul is clothed in 3 holy garments. So too, the non-holy soul, which is clothed in man's blood, consists of 10 crowns of impurity.
Okay. So King Solomon, the wisest of all men, tells us that everything is created as a mirror. If something exists in holiness, it has its corresponding in non-holiness. So this 10 faculties we spoke about in the godly soul also exist 10 faculties in the animal soul. The 3 garments in Now, in the godly soul, what are those 10 faculties made out of? Holiness. It's all about holiness. In the animal soul, what are they made out of?
So,
Impurity. Opposite of holiness. Right? It's not based on holiness. What do you think those 3 garments, what are you thinking? How does this animal soul express itself? Remember, how does the godly soul express itself?
thought, speech, and action.
Of what?
Godly,
Something very specific.
godliness.
Of godly things. What are those things?
Mitzvah.
Mitzvot. A very specific form of self-expression when you are expressing yourself in a way of cleaving to God, which is through performing mitzvot. That's the godly self right now expressing itself. How does the animal soul express itself? So let's take a look. Text 7, page 13. Adam, word to you.
When a person thinks, thoughts originating from the intelligence and emotions of the animal soul, or speaks words originating from them, or does an act which serves or expresses them, then the thought is in his brain, the words in his mouth, and the power of action in his hands and other organs are called impure garments. For these 10 unclean categories, i.e., the intelligence and emotions of the animal soul, clothe themselves in these garments during the time of that action, speech, or thought.
Okay. The animal soul's garments are in clothing and are expressing, so to speak, the animal soul's personality. What's the animal soul's personality? What do you think it revolves around? It revolves around ideas of achieving, getting what it wants, emotions of its ego, right? That's a very big part of what the animal soul is about. Ego. You know what they say, ego stands for 3 words.
Edging God out.
Edging God out or easing God out, right? That's complete opposite of what the godly soul is. The animal soul is all about, that's what's motivating it. Something that you want to leave that. Yeah. And so right now we've got 2 souls, 2 inners that we've spoken about. We've met our 2 souls. We've met our 2 personalities inside of us. There's the godly soul, there's the animal soul, and each one wants self-expression. Can you see a problem here? What's going to happen here? How many pairs of outer selves do we have? How many forms of garments of the soul do we have? 6. We have 6, but how many things can we be thinking simultaneously? Can we be thinking or doing things at the same time? Can we be acting and expressing the godly soul and at the same time acting and expressing the animal soul? No. So we got 2 sets of souls with their entire hierarchy of personality and what they are, and we've got 1 set of outers of what we said before. What was the expression we used? Outsides. There's insides and outsides. There's 1 set of outsides. The question is, which way is it going? Outside. So,
maybe we can find a balance.
Maybe we can find a balance. Okay. What do you mean? Doing some good things and
in an ideal sense, I would I guess my long-term aspiration would be to do mitzvot and godly things or God's will in most of the times, and when I see or sense the animal soul enter into me, then I can hopefully step aside.
Okay. So go
But I
ahead.
will see that. and then be purpose.
Good. Okay. So excellent. So the Tanya is really about achieving perfection. Now, some belief systems say, you know, how can a person be perfect? We're born flawed. We're made out of sin or whatever we are. It doesn't exist. Perfection, that's not a Jewish belief. At the same time, can we be perfect? I was actually speaking to someone who was talking about the course. I said, you know what, this is a chance to go through, you know, we all struggle with things. He's like, I don't struggle with anything. I'm like, okay. I said, so then he said, you know, perfection, is that something? He's like, I don't believe anyone can be perfect. Now, so can we be perfect? Is there a concept? Is perfection something within our realm? You know, they say practice makes perfect, but no one's perfect. So what about the practice? You heard that one? But what we're getting closer to Tanya's definition of perfection. Tanya is going to take us to let's take a look at student page, the way you in your books, 14, table 3. You've got the 10 faculties of the animal soul. That's insides. What are its insides? It's thoughts of godliness. It's thoughts of selflessness. What do you want? It wants just to be attached and cleave to God. You've got the 10 faculties of the animal soul. Animal soul is pleasure. Its insides are, how can I get another scoop of ice cream? How can I indulge in another nice holiday? And, you know, whatever it is, delicious food, whatever it is. And they all fighting over one set of garments. Your outsides, your self-expression. Now, one thing I think it's important to point out is that when we're speaking about self-expression, thought as an expression, talking about, we don't often think about thought as a way of expressing ourselves. Think of thought as like who we are. So what the Tanya is talking about is talking about active thought. It's not talking about. That should be plugged in. Why is that happening? It's not plugged in. 100% way. We're talking about active thought. Very important to realize this. Who I am, Tanya says you've got two sides to you. You've got an animal soul. What's an animal soul? Animal soul's got impulses. Animal soul's got base human desires. Sometimes completely wrong impulses. Sometimes horrible things. Is it selfish things completely? Then the godly soul is, we already understand godly souls and its desires. Tanya says that's who you are. Now, how do you actually act? Now you've got the choice how to self-express. The self-expression of thought is when you take a moment and you start thinking about something, start taking it apart. For example, I might encounter someone and the first thought that goes to my head is, I don't like this guy. Okay. That could be your animal soul feeling he's rubbing your ego, something wrong about it. That's not the animal soul expressing itself yet until I start thinking about this person and like, you know, just the way he walks, so arrogant, and the way he completely steps over other people. And that's me now going and expressing the animal soul in an active thought. The impulse is something that we're going to have because of the fact that we have an animal soul. I've got an animal soul. I'm going to have impulses, which are animalistic style impulses, which are base impulses, which are completely not especially impressive or kind or completely selfish. Completely selfish. Those impulses, they're part of me. Now, once we understand what our makeup is, we can accept two parts, super, super important that Tanya is talking about in terms of perfection. First is we can accept that we have an animal inside us. We got an animal soul. Once you accept that you have an animal inside you, you got this animalistic, you got these instinctive things which could be very far from pretty. But that's not where your work is. Your work is not to get rid of the animal. Your animal is there. That's who you are. It's something. Being human means you have these things inside you. You're being human. You're being natural. You have certain desires. Question is, do I need to act on them? Acting on them. Tanya says you need to control that. Tanya is saying your godly soul is, or your godly soul should be controlling your actions. Your actions shouldn't be acting out your animal soul. You shouldn't be thinking thoughts which are animalistic and selfish. You shouldn't be talking things which are, you shouldn't be acting on things which, that's the area where we have full control. Perfection in the realm of action, behavioral perfection, 100% within our control. Changing who we are, no, accept who you are. Recognize you have an animal inside you. Recognize these things are part of who you are. It's one of your souls. You have another soul, but it's one of your souls. So that's a fundamental idea here, where we recognize that just because you have a feeling doesn't make you bad. It just makes you human. I have an impulse which is completely inappropriate. That doesn't make me bad. I'm human. When Jimmy Carter was running for president, they asked him, did you ever have an affair? So he said, I had an inappropriate thought. In my heart, I lusted, or something like that. Well, guess what, Jimmy Carter? In your heart, you lusted. You're a human. That's not something which makes you a bad person. But did you act on those thoughts? It sounds, that's really within your domain. That's the part which is crucial. And Tanya is going to focus on that element of achieving perfection in the place of action, in achieving self-mastery in the place where we are mastering our levushim, our garments of our soul, instead of expressing the animal side of us. Okay. Yeah. Any questions where we're up to, right? So what does that mean? So we're supposed to be thinking and speaking and thinking words of Torah all day. I'm saying anyone in that category? That sounds like a very high bar to be. Is that what we're saying right here? Let's take a look at the animal souls expression. Text 8, page 15. Near?
Deeds, words, and thoughts that are not directed to God, to His will and service, are all garments for the animal soul. For this is the meaning of the term sitra achra, literally the other side. Anything that is not on the side of holiness.
Okay. That's pretty broad range, right? What are we saying? What's the garments of the animal soul? Thought, speech, or action, which is not towards God, is animal soul. That's like, that can incorporate things which are really bad towards to the extent of incorporating just eating and then just going about your life. I'm saying I'm driving, taking my kids to school. What is that? Is that animal soul action or is that godly soul action? Well, based on what we just read, what is that? Animal soul. It's not directed toward God.
But if you're eating kosher food, would that be considered material godly soul?
You're not violating the eating non-kosher food, but the actual act of eating, is that a godly act? Is that maybe matzah on Pesach, when I sit down and I'm eating matzah on Pesach at the Seder, that's a mitzvah to eat. But I need to eat breakfast. There's a mitzvah in Torah to eat breakfast, not per se. You need to look after your health, but so that's all animal soul expression. Yeah.
Can I ask something? But if you take your kids to school, for example, with an intention for them to study Torah and pass it on?
Okay,
Does it make it godly action?
good, excellent.
Yes.
And that's exactly where we're going now with what Lubov you just said. We have to remember one thing which is super important. The animal soul is not bad. It's not evil. That's not what the animal soul is at all. It's selfish. It's our natural self. It's our instinctive self, but it's not bad. The mother bird bringing his kids a worm is that that's goodness. It's lovely, but it's a selfish goodness. It's not. Would you say that's bad? Absolutely not. So what the animal soul, its makeup is it's something which we can call non-holiness. It's not unholiness. It's non-holiness. It's just not holy. That's what the animal soul's makeup is. It's the stuff which is non-holiness. Now, there was a little girl who came with her parents, and to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, they had a private audience. It was like a yechidus with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And this little girl turned to the Rebbe and she says, "Rebbe, I have a question." So the Rebbe said, "Go ahead." She said, "I'm worried about nuclear energy, atomic energy." So obviously, it was, I guess it was in the news and people. So the little girl was. So the Rebbe said to her, "Do you have a knife at home in the drawer?" "Sure, I have a knife." So the Rebbe said, "Is the knife good or bad?" I said, "Well, it depends what you do with the knife, The Rebbe said, "That's exactly what atomic energy is. It depends what you do with it. That's powerful stuff. It can do amazing things. It can do terrible things. And it all depends on how you use it. That's the key." Exactly that is this point with the animal soul. The animal soul is it's not black and white. Most of life is not black and white. It's not bad and it's not good. The evil is clearly evil. The good, the holiness is clearly the godly soul. What about all those things in between? So, like Lubov, you just said, it all depends how you use them. And this is a fascinating idea within Judaism. There's two terms. There's one term which is called mutar. Let's take a look at page 18. Okay, it's going to be. Let me give you preface, and then we'll go and see it inside. Text 18. Let's look at it. First. It goes like this. Hebrew is an amazing language. The words carry the meaning of what the content of the word is all about. How do you say something is forbidden in Hebrew?
So,
Asur.
so it's like tied.
Asur means tied. Now, what does it mean something is tied? Something is, it can't be worked with. That's in the language that Tanya describes to us, something which is tied, it's tied to the realm of impurity. Something which is tied to the realm of impurity, if I'm going to try use it in a positive way, I can't kind of use it positively to bring it to a place where it's going to be become something special because I've used it positively. It's almost like, the guy who was going to kill someone and then give all the guys his possessions to charity. Hold on a second, you just did something wrong. That doesn't become a righteous act right now. Along those lines, there's certain things which we're told they are tied. They are not neutral. They can't go this either way. We're talking about, it's not non-holiness. That's impurity. The only way to deal with that stuff is stay away from that stuff. That's the spiritual makeup of the universe. It's got this impurity stuff. Then there's godly stuff. Most of the stuff is in between. And it's all depending on your motivation and how you use it. If you use it positively, you've brought it to a place of holiness. If you use it just not that way, then it's just an animal being an animal. That's selfish, and that's where it remains. The animal soul is this non-holiness. It can go either way. It's in this place where it constantly can switch to becoming, drawing after and becoming a depending on its motivation, it can move away from its selfishness and it can become something more meaningful, or it can be just purely something selfish and something crass and something base. It all depends how you use it, and that's the language in halacha. Something which is permissible. How do you say permissible?
Mutar.
Mutar. What's mutar? Mutar, huh?
Not tied.
Not tied. It's workable. This is something you can work with. You can deal with. This is something which is depending on how you use it, it can become something wonderful. So if you, for example, if I eat something and I eat for a purpose of being healthy, so that I can go and do good things, and I can go and help my family and things like that. So what have I just done? I've eaten kosher food, and I've even said a blessing beforehand. I took something which was just an act of eating, and I made it into something holy. I made it into something meaningful. Whereas I could do that same act of eating and just become a self-indulgent process, which is now taking that down to a place of kind of impurity. Does that make sense? That most things in life can go either way, because the animal soul is made up of this stuff that can. I don't know what time we're at. 9:30, so we need to finish up. And this is a very super important. Can I elevate a trip to I don't know, to the Bahamas? Can that become something godly and special, or is that gonna just be?
Or if you went to the Bahamas and you found a bunch of Jewish people that wanted to study Talmud or Torah,
and instead of lying on the beach doing you study
the beach, that would be
so you've elevated your trip. So absolutely, a trip to the Bahamas might be, you have to be pretty resolute to turn it into something meaningful and something holy, but it's possible. Anything can go either way. Can you I don't know.
Maybe my better example is if you get to the Bahamas and there's somebody there who's grieving because they usually lost a family member, be able to help them make minions and say Kaddish.
Good. Okay. So let's take a look at text 10, page 17. This is an example where we can demonstrate this playing out. I'll read. For instance, if one eats delicacies like fat beef and drinks spiced wine in order to broaden his mind for the service of God and for his Torah, as Rava said, wine and fragrance make my mind more receptive, or in order to fulfill the commandment to enjoy the Shabbos and the festivals, so too concerning speech. For example, he who makes a humorous remark to sharpen his mind and make his heart rejoice in his God and his Torah and service, which should be practiced joyfully, as Rava was wont to do with his pupils, prefacing his discourses with a humorous remark, whereupon the students became cheerful. So he took a joke. You can imagine Rava's jokes weren't part of that thing, which would completely be part of the inappropriate jokes, which would initially start off with, that doesn't belong to any realm of non-holiness, that's unholiness. No, this is just a power joke, a joke which is a nice joke, and he used it to cheer up his students that would be more receptive to learning. What did he just do? He took a joke and he brought it up from a place of non-holiness to a place which it became holy. And this takes us to the final thing of our class tonight. Let's take a look at page 19, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So here, Maslow, humanist psychology, he lays out what are the fundamental needs of a human, all the way from physiological safety, love and belonging, esteem, self-actualization. Now let's take a look at learning exercise 4. Look carefully at the hierarchy of needs and desires in this diagram. Where on the hierarchy would you place the cutoff between the desires of the animal soul and the desires of the godly soul? First question. Secondly, look carefully at the hierarchy of needs and desires in this diagram. Which of these pursuits can become holy pursuits? Which are inherently unholy pursuits? Take a moment. Okay. So let's do question one. Look carefully there. Where on the hierarchy would you put off the cutoff of the animal soul? Where's the godly soul in this hierarchy of needs?
I think love belongs.
Love belonging is where begins godly soul.
Yep.
Beneath that is animal soul.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that?
I think there are some things within the like physiological and safety that have godliness to them. For example, the breathing, the physiological,
Okay.
is the same way we were sleeping on the soul, and also the of morality and possibly a family considerations that may also fit into the
Godly soul. Okay.
So it
Okay.
looks like it's not so discreet as the question
So
poses.
you're saying it's you have to go by piece and have elements of either. Okay.
Yeah, because then in this.
But hold on, let's just recap.
Esteem
Yeah.
is achievement.
Good.
Achievement is a
Let's just wait 1 second. We're forgetting something. If we go back to text 5 on page 10, okay? Let's read that together. Text 5, page 10. What is the godly soul's desire? In addition to its 10 faculties, every godly soul possesses 3 garments. They are thought, speech, and action, and they find expression in the 613 commandments of the Torah. Anything which is not an expression in the commandments of is a direct connection to God. Anything which is not purely, I am doing something, which is purely a direct connection. It's not a mitzvah. That's not godly soul. Anything which is not a mitzvah is not godly soul. So let's go back now. Is anything on this thing godly soul? Nothing here is godly soul.
They also all can be.
Okay, that's question 2. That wouldn't turn into godly soul. That's animal soul going. Look carefully. Which of these pursuits can become holy pursuits? What's the answer? All of them. Every single one of them can become holy pursuits. That doesn't turn them into godly soul. That's animal soul being able to elevate and make them something holy. That is not an expression of the godly soul, though. Expression of the godly soul is very specific. So ultimately, like this, the godly soul is within the body. It can't leave the body. The animal soul can do things which are in complete violation of the godly soul, which are doing bad things, or the animal soul can do things which take, the regular things and make them holy too. That's how we operate. And even just because, basic, you want to talk about, I don't know, you could be, just because you're eating, a hamburger, and you could eat caviar, that doesn't make it something special just because you're eating caviar. Again, animal soul can be sitting and eating caviar. As long as I'm eating that caviar because it makes me feel so good and I love the taste of caviar and I just want to indulge right now and I'm only caring about myself, that's animal soul going wrong one way. If I take the same food and the same mindset and I'm doing it in a mindful way, that's animal soul going in a different way. And I'll finish off with this idea. They say that, I'm sorry for going over time. I lost my watch. It was on my phone until I plugged it in. They tell of in the old country, so the Jewish woman would still today, a lot of communities still have a custom. If they read on the Torah, they read on Shabbat from the Torah scroll. If they read one Torah, so the wife would make one kugel. Kugel is like a Not cake, it's more like a,
Google.
it's like a noodle, whatever, pashtida, how do you say it?
Sweet spaghetti.
Whatever, a pie kind of thing, sort of, yeah. If you would have two Torahs, because certain times they take out two Torahs, let's say on certain occasions, so she would have two kugels. If she would, then a certain, very, like only a couple of days in the year, you take extra, you have three kugels. 3 Torahs, she would make 3 kugels. So the big question is, when I eat those 3 kugels, is that the godly soul eating the 3 kugels, or is that the animal soul eating the 3 kugels? So it depends. If when I'm looking at the kugels, I'm thinking about the Torah, so then that's the godly soul in the 3 kugels. But if when I'm looking at the Torah, I'm thinking about the 3 kugels, then that's the animal soul thinking about the kugels. So that's just giving you a little bit of an understanding into what we've gone through today is some key principles in understanding our anatomy, looking at our motivations, things what's our makeup, how our makeup is self-expressed, and if we could talk about what's to do till next week when we're going to go into the next section of Tanya. We've got our lexicon. Let's start looking out for these kinds of things. Start during our week. Identify where are our motivations coming from. How can I change that motivation either into godly soul or into elevating it to become something holy? Remember, accepting ourselves because we are human and recognizing that we have these 2 souls within us. But that doesn't mean that they need to express in the ways that we know we've got the ability to self-master on the behavioral level to control our actions and our speech and our thoughts. So with that, I wish you a beautiful week ahead. And Bezrat Hashem, next week, we'll go further into starting the program of figuring out how this all relates to us and how we can start using it within our lives in a tangible way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Laila Tov. Good seeing you all.
Thank you, Shneya. Bye, everyone.